Hello there, Camp Adventure. This is Jason Hammond from the Children's Museum of Houston. I am the A-Steam manager, and right now we're going to talk about anthropology. Now, anthropologists are a unique type of scientist. They are both a social scientist and they can be a scientist that follows sort of the same methods as a chemist or a biologist. They can be formulating hypotheses and theories about ancient cultures. Now, what they're really interested in, anthropologists, is how a culture has changed over time. So an anthropologist doesn't have to look at someone or a society or a great big group of people from thousands of years ago. They can go interview people today and figure out, okay, this is how this culture changed over time. That's their main goal, is to say, okay, this culture started here and it ended here at this precise moment, or continuing on at this precise moment, but this is where we're at right now. So it's a very interesting science that can go through a lot of different levels and get help from a lot of different types of scientists. So an archaeologist is someone who understands the culture because of the artifacts they left behind. Well, an anthropologist might employ or work with an archaeologist to figure out, okay, if this group of people had this at this time and then had these artifacts at this time and then had these artifacts at this time, why did they change from using this to using this to using this, or living in this kind of dwelling versus this kind of dwelling versus this kind of dwelling? It's really, really fascinating. Who we're going to talk about today are the ancient Egyptians. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is their mummification. So death rites are really important in the culture. It seems a little morbid, but it's extremely important. Like when you look at what we in the United States do, we bury people in cemeteries, we cremate people, and we put them in jars that people keep. Egyptians didn't really do that. Now, for some people they did, but for a high-ranking level person, they would create these mummies. Pyramids have a lot to do with mummies. You've probably seen some of the pyramids in Egypt, these really big stone structures. For the longest time, the Pyramid of Khufu, which is part of the Giza pyramid structures, was the largest freestanding structure built by human beings until like the Eiffel Tower, so thousands and thousands of years. Just before that, the biggest one was called Zoger, and it was only 50 years between the two, and they were like very, very vastly different. Like Dozier was maybe like this big, and then Khufu was like this big, going all the way across the screen here. So one thing that an anthropologist would talk about is like, what happened? Why did these people go from making this really impressive but smaller stone structure to this huge stone structure? And it had a lot to do with economics, had a lot to do with religion, and had a lot to do with the people in power. A lot of times when you look at a pyramid, those pyramids were designed as sort of like crypts or tombs or burial places of a very, very powerful person. So when you look at mummies in Egypt, you don't see all that many. I mean, you know, very powerful people like the pharaoh, which could be a woman or a man, would be mummified. But, you know, maybe some of their trusted officials might be mummified. But, you know, just the people that were coming and going in the marketplace, or people who were farmers or whatnot, they may not be mummified. Doesn't mean they weren't. They could have been, but it might not have happened. So this is where anthropology comes in. It's like, why were some people mummified? Why were some people not mummified? What's going on? Who had the ability to be mummified? Who had the ability to, you know what, say, I don't want to be mummified. I'm going to do this instead. So it's really, really interesting how all these different rites come about. Now, mummies aren't just something that you find in Egypt. They're very, very famous from Egypt, but you find them all around. Like South America has lots of mummies. Mexico has lots of mummies. They're just different. So in the case of the Egyptian mummies, because they were often people of power, they would get all these funerary rites, these funeral rites that would have them get wrapped up, and they would get buried with a bunch of stuff. And it was a very, very significant moment. A lot of times in like places like South America or Mexico, like societies would get together, and instead of digging into their crop areas, they would say put people into caves and that natural dryness of that cave would mummify them. They may necessarily even wrap them up in anything. So it's all very interesting how it goes from one region to the other, one society to the other, how it happens. So you're going to be able to make a mummy and wrap it up, okay? Because that's the Egyptian way. And this is how you're going to do it. It's really, really simple, but it's actually also a lot of fun, and I enjoy it a lot. And I'm going to tell you something you can do with the mummy afterwards that can also be a whole lot of fun. So first thing you're going to need is some Play-Doh. In fact, you're all getting a big tub of Play-Doh so that more than one person can make a mummy. Once you get your Play-Doh, there's something in your kit that you have that I don't have. You have these blocks that you're going to separate about 9 inches, okay? And that's where you're going to create and mold your body from the Play-Doh. Now, since I don't have the block because they're all inside your kits, I just used the plate and I molded my body, and there it is. There's my little mummy body. You want it to be really tightly wrapped. You don't want to just put a couple of sheets of paper towel down, because that's what you're going to do is use as your wrappings. You're going to cut up little pieces of paper towel like this, and you're going to wrap it. Now, you're not going to wrap it dry like this. You're going to make a concoction that is this right here. This is glue, which we have pre-measured for you. You're going to put it into a bowl and you're going to add water. So you're going to add about half a cup of water, and you might want to add more if it's a little too thick, or if it starts to get thin. If you have some extra glue, add more, but try not to make it too thin. Start really with a half cup of water, mix it up, and then see like how its consistency is, and then you can add more after that. So I'm going to set this down over here. You're not going to be able to see it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip my paper towel in there, and it feels a little sticky on my hand, which is good, and you can see it's you can see it dripping a little bit. And then I'm just gonna put it on one part of my mummy, and I'm gonna pat it down so that it's secure on there. You can see I added it right there. Okay, now like I said, you're gonna have the ability to do a lot more with your mummy, because you're gonna have those blocks where it's gonna be up above the ground or above any surface, and you can actually wrap it. Okay, now these strips I made are 2 inches by 1 inches. We do give you a pair of scissors. Again, you get a small pair of scissors, and we do give you a ruler so you can measure it out. But you can measure anything you want. If you want to make them longer, like if you want to make them 6 inches by a ½ inch, you can do that. But just try to be consistent on your measurements so that when you're wrapping it, they're all pretty much the same size. You might have to make some smaller, some bigger, but it's okay however you feel like doing it. So I'm going to dip this again, and you just get the idea. Now it's a little messy because your fingers will get sticky. I'm going to put this over on the other leg. And the reason why you got to wrap it more than once is you can kind of see, if you look really carefully, that you can see the green through the wrapping at this point. And we don't want that to be seen. You don't want to see the body. You want it to be completely covered up. Now, this is not to hide the identity of the mummy. People who buried, very powerful people who became mummies, they left all kinds of indications that this was this person. They left inscriptions onto their sarcophagus, which is their coffin. They left inside the sarcophagus, they left certain items that only that pharaoh, that queen or king would have had. They actually, not even just on the sarcophagus, they would sometimes write things onto the wrappings themselves, or they would leave like a medal or a medallion of some sort that had some indication who the person was. So the reason to wrap it is to make them very secure, okay, and to help them to be preserved for thousands and thousands of years, which they were. You just keep on doing this for a while. It's gonna take you a minute, and until you get it all nice and completely wrapped up. And you'll see, like what I'm doing right here is, I put this piece on and I kind of secured it around the arm and the leg. So you'll get the idea just how to sort of put it all together and wrap it up. And again, this is your project, so you can do it the way you want to do it. Another thing I can tell you about, which is something you might already know, is this glue substance I made is called paper mache. You can actually make paper mache using flour. You just have to do it a little bit different with the ratios. So like if you have 2 cups of flour, you might put like 3/4 cup of water in and then mix it up. And you just want to get to like this sort of like doughy mix, not too thick, so enough that you can dip things into it and put it on, but not too thin either. So you get the idea. So you can see I kind of started doing the wrapping of it, and it's already looking pretty cool. Now, I wouldn't stop here. I would keep cutting pieces and wrap it. I let it dry, flip it over, wrap it again, let it dry, flip it over, wrap it again, maybe 3 or 4 times even. So this is one of those projects that could, if you're doing it the way I'm doing it, it could take you a little bit of time because you want to do it properly. Now, once you're done, I'm going to wipe my hands off a little bit because I'm going to pick up other pieces. We give you like beads and pipe cleaners, and you can make adornments for it. Adornments meaning like decoration. So you can put some beads onto your mummy. You can take the pipe cleaners and put something under, like a design on there. So you kind of you can give it like this sort of honorific sort of look to it. Now, the one thing I said that would be fun that you can do is you can use your mummy as a time capsule. So you can grab a box, doesn't matter what kind of box, just enough to fit the mummy in. Put the mummy in and put some things that are important to you in there. And then add some stuff like that's important to you from school or from your home, or what sports you like, what movies you like, what books you like, anything you want. Just put it inside, put the top on, and then write on the box and like don't open for 5 years, don't open for 10 years even, whatever you want. So basically, if it's 2020 right now, you wouldn't open it until July of 2025. So that's 5 years from now. And then you can open it up and see like what was important to you 5 years ago. And that's always a fun thing to do. Hide it too. Don't let yourself be tempted. Like put it like in your parents' closet, ask them first, or bury it deep in your closet, put it into a drawer you don't use too often, or whatever you feel like. If you have your own home and you have a backyard or a front yard, and ask your parents, maybe they'll let you dig a hole and you can put it in. Now, if you dig a hole and put it in, don't put it like in a biodegradable box, because then everything will be destroyed. You have to think of a better box to put it in. Again, just so you understand, the whole idea of doing a lesson like this is to get you interested in different cultures, as well as getting you interested in being an anthropologist. You may not know this, but most of us are naturally anthropologists. We're very curious about certain cultures almost innately. It's almost like born within us. I've always been very interested in Egypt culture, but I've also been very interested in a culture from New Zealand called the Maoris. So I actually went to New Zealand so I could learn about them more like face to face. I wasn't an anthropologist, but I was, I wrote letters and I asked to go to their village and I asked to see what they would do customarily, and I was allowed to. So it's just something that we do. Our curiosity of other people is very, very, very natural. Especially people who've been around for a long time and have preserved their traditions. Now, the United States is pretty young. It doesn't seem like it. If our nation was born, I'm going to say, in 1776. It's been here a long time before that. That's only, a little bit over 200 years, 200 and, 44 years. That's not a very old country. I mean, we're not old at all. So our change is very, very easy to understand because we have historical records. It's also, and we have changed a lot. Don't get it wrong. Even though we're young, it has changed a lot. But there are people who've been around for thousands of years whose culture has changed actually very little. And that's also very, very interesting. Or they've kept their traditions and kept up with what's going on today. So that's what anthropology is. If you're like a music lover, that is something that anthropologists do. There's a very, very famous anthropologist named Alan Lomax, who in the 1920s and 30s went around the United States and collected people's songs. These were songs that were sung amongst families, amongst certain groups of people, and he recorded them. And without him doing that, we might have lost those songs forever. We might have. If you're in the movies, you can be an anthropologist. If you have a huge love of old film, there's anthropologists who actually find old film, preserve it, and try to figure out what happened in this movie. Why wasn't it as popular as, say, Star Wars or something like that? They try to kind of piece everything together, what's happening. So really, we all are anthropologists. It's something very, very, very born within us. So it's a cool thing to study, and it's a great job to have. And that's another thing I want you to understand. Sometimes when we do these activities, it's to get you interested into a field that you can maybe have a job in someday. So being an anthropologist is also a lot of fun, and you might be so interested in doing Egyptology, or be interested in Mayan culture, or be interested in Maori culture, or any other kind of culture across the world, that you will become an anthropologist so you can fill in some gaps later on. That's it. Have fun with this. That's what's really important about this one. It's like just having a lot of fun and thinking about why you're doing it and maybe how mummification changed as Egypt progressed, ancient Egypt progressed. And I really hope you're enjoying camp. I hope you're having a great summer, and I do hope to see you soon. So again, my name's Jason. I'm saying goodbye now, and send pictures of your completed mummies. And if you do make a time capsule, send pictures of that, because that's something that would be really, really fun and interesting to progress and track when you decide to open it 5 years from now. All right then, I'll talk to you all later, and have a great, great day. Bye-bye.